resisting! I'm not resisting! He's not doing anything!
White cop beats black father in front of his kids. Hours later, he's found dead in the woods. This story will shock you, break your heart, and leave you with questions that echo long after the final moment. So before we begin, take a second to like this video, share it with others who need to see the truth, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to comment your thoughts, because this is not just a story, it is a cry for justice, a reminder of how quickly lives can change and how the innocent often pay the heaviest price. Stay with me until the end, because every twist, every revelation, will take you deeper into the chilling reality of what happened to one father and why hours later his lifeless body was discovered in the woods. Now let's begin. The sun had barely risen over the small quiet town that morning when Marcus Green, a hardworking black father of 3, prepared his children for school. Marcus wasn't a man of wealth or status, but he was a man of integrity. He worked long hours at a construction site, sometimes pulling double shifts to make sure his family never went hungry. His children adored him, his neighbors respected him, and his coworkers described him as someone who never gave up no matter how hard life pressed down. But little did anyone know that on this very morning, an encounter with a white police officer would forever change everything. Marcus had promised his kids that after school he would take them for ice cream. It was a simple promise, but one that meant the world to his children. 7-year-old Kayla, 9-year-old Jamal, and 12-year-old Isaiah. They looked up to their father as a hero, a protector, someone who stood strong even in the face of struggle. But within minutes their image of him would be shattered, not because of what he did, but because of what was done to him. As Marcus drove his kids to school in his beat-up Honda Civic, the flashing red and blue lights appeared in his rearview mirror. His stomach dropped because he knew that in this town, traffic stops rarely ended fairly for men who looked like him. He pulled over calmly, whispering to his kids that everything was okay, telling them to keep quiet, keep their hands visible, and trust that their father would handle it. The officer stepped out of his cruiser, tall, broad-shouldered, white skin glinting in the morning sun. His name was Officer Bradley Cole, a cop already notorious in the black community for harassment, intimidation, and unnecessary force. But his record was clean because complaints always seemed to vanish before reaching the department's disciplinary board. Bradley Cole approached the car with aggression in his steps, tapping his flashlight on the glass even though it was daylight. Marcus rolled down his window and greeted him with respect. "Good morning, officer. Is there a problem?" But Bradley's tone was sharp and demeaning. "License and registration now." Marcus complied, moving slowly, narrating each action so his kids could hear how careful he was being. "I'm reaching into the glove compartment now, officer," he said. But Cole wasn't satisfied. He barked orders louder, demanding Marcus step out of the car. The children's voices quivered. "Daddy, what's happening?" Marcus told them it was fine, told them to stay in their seats. But the second he stepped out, Cole shoved him hard against the vehicle, pressing his face against the hood. "Resisting already?" Cole mocked. Even though Marcus hadn't resisted at all, his children cried out, "Stop hurting our dad." But their voices only fueled Cole's rage. Within moments the situation escalated. Cole slammed Marcus to the ground, his knee pressing into Marcus's back as he shouted, "Stop resisting," when there was no resistance, only fear. The kids inside the car screamed for their father. Kayla's sobs pierced the air. Jamal pounded on the window begging Cole to stop. Isaiah yelled that his dad hadn't done anything. Neighbors began peeking from porches, some pulling out cell phones to record. But Cole didn't care. With each strike of his baton across Marcus's ribs, he seemed to grow more violent, and each cry from the children seemed to fuel his authority. In those long painful minutes, Marcus Green wasn't just a father. He was a symbol of how power could be abused. He begged Cole to stop, gasping for air, saying his kids were watching. But Cole sneered and whispered words that chilled bystanders to the bone. "Let them watch." The brutality only ended when backup arrived, other officers pulling Cole away as Marcus lay bloodied on the pavement, coughing, clutching his side, his kids running to his body, holding him, screaming, asking why their daddy was being treated like this. And though Marcus was eventually allowed to leave after resisting arrest, charges were mysteriously dropped on the spot. The damage was done, his body bruised, his dignity shattered, and his children traumatized forever. But no one, not even Marcus himself, could have predicted what would happen just hours later, because by nightfall, Marcus Green would be found dead in the woods on the outskirts of town. And the question everyone would ask is, how did it happen? Who was responsible? And why did the same officer who brutalized him hours earlier appear at the scene, looking suspiciously calm? If you're still with me, Don't forget to like this video right now, share it so the world never forgets Marcus's name, and subscribe for more real stories like this, because what comes next will leave you speechless. After returning home bruised and shaken, Marcus sat with his children trying to comfort them, trying to make sense of what they had seen. He told them that sometimes people abuse power but that they should never let hate poison their hearts. "Daddy's okay," he lied, clutching his ribs in pain. "Daddy's strong." But Isaiah could see the fear in his father's eyes. Jamal could hear the quiver in his voice. Kayla clung to his arm and begged him never to leave her. Neighbors gathered around, some telling Marcus to file a complaint, others warning him not to because they knew the system was rigged. But Marcus was determined. He said, "I can't let this slide. My kids saw everything. I have to stand up." Those words would become the final promise of his life. By evening Marcus called a local community activist, telling him what happened, arranging to meet and share the footage neighbors had captured. Little did he know that call was being listened to, tapped, or leaked by someone who wanted him silenced. Later that night Marcus left his house, telling his kids he would be back soon, telling his mother on the phone that he was only stepping out for a meeting. But he never came home. Hours passed. His children fell asleep waiting for him. His mother paced nervously, and his neighbors wondered why his car was still parked by the edge of Miller Woods. And when a search party went out, what they found froze everyone in fear. Marcus Green's lifeless body hanging from a tree, bruises still fresh from the beating earlier that day, his eyes swollen, his clothes torn, and though authorities rushed to label it a suicide, the community knew better. They knew Marcus had no reason to take his own life. They knew he had every reason to fight for justice. And they knew the last person seen near those woods was Officer Bradley Cole, standing there in the shadows, cigarette smoke curling in the dark, watching silently as investigators arrived. Ladies and gentlemen, this is only the beginning of the story, and I promise you as we unfold the investigation, the cover-ups, the testimonies, and the shocking truth, you will see why this case is more than just tragedy. It is a mirror to a broken system that protects those in power while silencing those who dare to stand up. So don't leave. Watch this till the very end because the truth about what happened to Marcus Green will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about justice in America. The news spread quickly like fire through dry grass. By dawn everyone in town had heard that Marcus Green, the man beaten in broad daylight in front of his children, was now dead, hanging from a tree deep in Miller Woods. But what was even more disturbing was how the authorities responded. The police department issued a statement within hours claiming Marcus's death was a tragic suicide. No autopsy had been completed. No forensic evidence had been presented, yet the conclusion was announced as if it were already written before his body was even cold. Neighbors who had filmed the beating the morning before began receiving phone calls from unknown numbers telling them to delete the footage. Community activists were threatened and warned not to push the issue, and Marcus's grieving mother, Mrs. Evelyn Green, collapsed at the scene when she saw her son's body being lowered from the tree. She screamed that her son would never take his own life, that Marcus was a fighter, that he loved his kids too much to ever leave them this way. The children meanwhile sat inside their grandmother's home, still in shock, still wearing the same clothes from the day before, asking why their daddy wasn't coming back. Isaiah, the eldest, clenched his fists and swore he saw Officer Cole at the woods that night. He told his grandmother what he saw, but when she mentioned it to investigators, they brushed her off, saying the boy was traumatized and confused. But was he, or was his testimony being silenced because it pointed directly to the man the town feared most, Officer Bradley Cole, the same cop who laughed as he beat Marcus in the street? Cole himself was calm, almost too calm. When reporters approached him the next morning he smirked and said he couldn't comment on ongoing investigations. But behind that smirk was arrogance, a sense that no matter what people said, he would walk away untouched because the system had always protected him, and in many ways he was right, because behind closed doors local officials were already aligning their stories, already preparing to close the case quickly before national media got involved. But Marcus's death would not be buried so easily. His community refused to stay silent, and his children became the voice he was robbed of. Remember viewers, as you hear this, share it widely. Comment what you think, because every voice matters in demanding justice. Every share keeps Marcus's name alive. Now as the community began to organize, small rallies were held outside the police station. People carried signs that read "Justice for Marcus" and "Stop Police Brutality," yet each time they gathered, officers in riot gear lined the sidewalks, glaring, intimidating. waiting for someone to step out of line so they could be arrested. But among the protesters was a young woman named Tasha Reed, a journalist from the next city over who had come after seeing videos of the beating circulate online. She promised Evelyn Green that she would not let her son's death be silenced. She began interviewing neighbors, collecting phone recordings, and piecing together the timeline of Marcus's final hours. What she discovered was disturbing. Several people confirmed seeing Marcus park his car near the edge of Miller Woods just before 9 p.m. They said he looked nervous but determined. One neighbor overheard him talking on the phone saying he was going to meet someone who had evidence, but who that someone was remained a mystery. Then came the chilling testimony of a local hunter who had been in the woods that night. He claimed he saw headlights, heard shouting, and then silence followed by the sound of a car door slamming. When he approached cautiously, he spotted a police cruiser parked not far from where Marcus's body was later discovered. When asked if he recognized the officer, the hunter lowered his voice and said, "I know who it was, everyone knows. But I'm not saying his name out loud. I've got kids too." His fear was evidence enough, and though Tasha suspected who he meant, she needed proof. But getting proof in a town where the police controlled everything was nearly impossible. Meanwhile, Evelyn Green hired an independent pathologist to conduct a second autopsy after the official report claimed suicide by hanging. The independent report told a different story. It revealed broken ribs consistent with baton strikes, fresh bruises across Marcus's back and arms, swelling in his face and blunt force trauma to his head, injuries that could not have been self-inflicted. The pathologist concluded the death was highly suspicious and inconsistent with suicide. This report leaked online and instantly reignited outrage. People demanded answers, yet still the police department refused to investigate Officer Cole. They called the report inconclusive and continued to label the death a suicide. But the pressure was building. The story spread across social media. Hashtags like Justice for Marcus began trending. National news outlets picked it up. And suddenly the small town was under a microscope, something the local officials had desperately tried to avoid. And here is where the story twists deeper, because while the world was beginning to see Marcus's death for what it was, the people closest to the case were experiencing intimidation at levels that revealed just how far those in power would go to silence them. Tasha received threats, her tires slashed, her apartment broken into though nothing was stolen, only her notes scattered across the floor. Evelyn Green was followed when she went to the grocery store. Her phone rang with anonymous calls, warning her to stop digging, and even Marcus's children weren't spared. At school they were teased, harassed, and once even cornered by older boys who whispered that their dad got what he deserved. When the family reported this to the school, nothing was done. It was clear, the system wanted them to break, to fall silent, but Evelyn refused. She told reporters, "They killed my son, but they will not kill his voice. His children will grow up knowing their father was a victim, not a coward." Her strength ignited others. Churches held vigils, marches grew larger, and though police tried to disperse crowds, the pressure only mounted. Viewers, this is the part of the story where I ask you once again, don't just watch, act, hit like right now, comment your thoughts, share this video with as many people as you can, because silence is what they count on. Silence is what allows stories like Marcus's to vanish. Now as weeks passed, new revelations surfaced. A whistleblower from inside the police department secretly contacted Tasha. He claimed files existed showing multiple complaints against Officer Cole, each mysteriously disappearing from his record. He said Cole had been disciplined informally several times for excessive force but protected by higher-ups because he brought in high arrest numbers. The whistleblower even hinted that Cole was involved in off-the-books activities, things like shaking down suspects, intimidating witnesses, and that Marcus may have stumbled into something bigger than just an act of police brutality. Tasha pressed for details, but the source grew paranoid and cut off contact. Still, it was enough to suggest Marcus's death wasn't just personal retaliation. It may have been connected to a wider cover-up. Meanwhile, Isaiah, still haunted by what he saw, decided he would no longer stay quiet. He spoke publicly at a rally, saying clearly into the microphone, "I saw Officer Cole in the woods the night my dad died. I saw him with my own eyes." The crowd erupted. The video went viral. Millions viewed it. But the danger for the boy grew instantly. He received hateful messages online, people accusing him of lying, trolls saying his dad was a criminal. But through it all, the boy stood strong, determined to honor his father's memory. The courage of a 12-year-old boy shook even the most hardened hearts. But courage alone wasn't enough. The case needed hard evidence, proof that couldn't be denied. And just when hope seemed thin, a break came. A woman living near Miller Woods came forward anonymously. She said her outdoor security camera captured part of the road leading into the woods. She didn't think it mattered until she heard about the case. When she checked the footage from the night Marcus died, there it was, clear as day, a police cruiser driving toward the woods at 9:17 p.m., just minutes after Marcus was last seen. The department tried to discredit the footage, claiming the timestamp could have been tampered with, but independent tech experts verified its authenticity. Pressure reached boiling point. National civil rights lawyers got involved, and soon the FBI announced it would review the case. The town was divided. Some still defended Cole, claiming Marcus must have done something wrong. Others rallied for justice, but beneath it all was fear. Fear of what would be revealed if Cole's history came out, and fear of how far those protecting him would go to keep it hidden. Viewers, we are halfway through this story, but I promise the twists ahead will shock you even more. So if you haven't yet, subscribe right now. Hit that bell so you never miss the updates, and let's keep Marcus's name alive, because this isn't just about him, it's about every family that's been silenced by abuse of power. When the FBI stepped in, it sent shockwaves across the entire town because for years complaints against Officer Bradley Cole had been swept under the rug. But now with national attention, outside investigators began digging through everything. They subpoenaed files, interviewed witnesses, and reviewed body cam footage that had mysteriously gone missing on the night of Marcus's death. The police chief claimed the cameras malfunctioned, but the FBI wasn't buying it. They suspected tampering, and suddenly Cole's arrogance began to show cracks. Still he walked around town as if untouchable, flashing his badge, smirking at the Greens, even parking near their home as if to intimidate them. Isaiah once spotted him outside their house late at night, sitting in his cruiser, staring without saying a word. Evelyn called it harassment, but local officers refused to act, saying Cole was just patrolling. But was he, or was he sending a message? Meanwhile, Tasha the journalist kept digging and discovered something that turned the case on its head. Marcus had scheduled a meeting with a man known only as Reggie, a former officer who left the force under mysterious circumstances. Reggie had been investigating corruption inside the department. He claimed Cole was part of a small group of officers running side hustles, extorting locals, covering up crimes for cash, and even planting evidence. Reggie had reached out to Marcus after seeing the video of the beating, telling him he had information that could expose Cole and his backers. But the night Marcus died, Reggie vanished. His phone disconnected, his apartment cleared out as if he'd never lived there. Was it coincidence, or had he been silenced too? Viewers, pause for a second and think about this. Doesn't it sound like more than just one rogue cop? Doesn't it sound like a network of power? Now hit like right now, subscribe, and drop a comment if you believe Marcus was targeted to protect something bigger, because the deeper investigators went, the darker it became. As weeks passed, the FBI uncovered multiple cases where evidence tied to Cole disappeared. Suspects mysteriously recanted statements, and disciplinary files were altered. But the strongest connection came when they pulled phone records from the night Marcus died. Records showed Cole's cell phone pinged off a tower less than half a mile from Miller Woods around 9:30 p.m., right in the time frame Marcus was killed. When questioned, Cole claimed he was patrolling nearby responding to a call, but dispatch logs showed no such call existed. It was a blatant lie, yet still local prosecutors hesitated to bring charges. They feared going against one of their own. It was only after national protests reached their courthouse steps that they finally admitted something wasn't right. Meanwhile, Marcus's children continued to speak out. Kayla, the youngest, began drawing pictures of her father at school, showing him smiling, holding ice cream cones, but always next to him she drew a dark figure in a police uniform. Her teachers were disturbed. Psychologists said she was processing trauma. Jamal, the middle child, began to stutter, afraid to speak, terrified of sirens. Isaiah, however, grew stronger, more outspoken. He became the symbol of the movement, speaking at rallies, telling crowds that justice wasn't optional, that his father's death was murder, and that he would never stop fighting. The bravery of these children moved millions. Donations poured in, activists traveled to their town, and still through it all Bradley Cole walked free. Now here's where the story takes another shocking turn. One evening, Tasha received an anonymous envelope at her office. Inside were photographs, grainy but clear enough to recognize faces. They showed Cole with two other officers dragging Marcus into the woods. The timestamp matched the night of his death. These photos were explosive. They proved Marcus had not gone into the woods alone. But when Tasha prepared to release them publicly, her office was raided, computers seized under the guise of an unrelated investigation. Yet she had been smart. She'd already made copies and hidden them. Within days the photos leaked online and the internet erupted. Outrage spread worldwide. Hashtags surged again. Protests escalated, and now the FBI had no choice but to act aggressively. They brought Cole in for questioning, his smug confidence shaken. But he still denied everything, claiming the photos were doctored. Still, without an airtight case they couldn't arrest him. But they were closing in. Viewers, think about this. The man who killed Marcus was walking free while his children cried themselves to sleep. Does that sound like justice to you? If you're watching this, hit like right now. Share this so more people see, and comment your thoughts, because only pressure forces change. Now, as investigators built their case, another mysterious event shook the town. A witness, a young woman who had been jogging near Miller Woods the night of Marcus's death, suddenly turned up dead in what was called a car accident. But her family swore she had been followed and intimidated after telling friends she saw something suspicious that night. Her death sent a chilling message. Anyone who knew the truth was in danger, and it made the Green family fear for their lives. FBI agents offered protection, but resources were thin. Still, Evelyn told her grandchildren they must never be silenced. Your father's blood cries out for truth, she said. We will not let them bury him twice. The tension between the community and police boiled over. Protests grew violent. Tear gas filled the streets, and news cameras broadcasted the chaos across the nation. Cole, meanwhile, was suspended with pay, hiding behind the union and his lawyers. But cracks were showing. Whispers spread that even his fellow officers were beginning to turn on him. One retired cop anonymously told media that Cole bragged about teaching Marcus a lesson, that he had been reckless and sloppy. The whistleblower feared for his safety but wanted the world to know Cole's cruelty wasn't new. The FBI pieced it all together. The beating, the threats, the woods, the phone records, the photos, the intimidation of witnesses, the suspicious deaths, and soon they had enough to present to a grand jury. But before the jury could convene, something unexpected happened. Cole disappeared. One morning his house was empty, his car abandoned on a back road, his badge left on the seat. At first some speculated he fled, but days later his body was discovered face down in a river 30 miles away. The official cause of death, drowning. But just like Marcus, the details didn't add up. His body bore bruises, signs of struggle. Some said it was karma, others said it was silencing. Perhaps Cole knew too much and those above him tied up loose ends. The town was thrown into confusion. Marcus's supporters felt cheated of a trial, while others claimed his death was punishment enough. But what if it wasn't an accident? What if Cole's death was staged to close the book on the case? Because with him gone, the deeper corruption could vanish too. Tasha pressed harder, demanding the FBI not stop, demanding the files Cole left behind be uncovered. And slowly the truth emerged. Cole had kept a journal, notes of his activities, names of people he worked with, amounts of money exchanged. And in those pages was chilling confirmation that Marcus's death wasn't just about one cop losing control. It was about silencing a man who threatened to expose corruption that stretched far beyond a single officer. Viewers, if you've stayed with me this long, thank you. But don't stop now. Hit like, share this everywhere, and drop a comment, because we're nearing the end and the truth is darker than anyone expected. Marcus Green didn't die just because of one brutal beating. He died because he was about to reveal a system built on lies and power, and those who profited from it would stop at nothing to keep it hidden. And even though Cole is gone, the question remains, who else was involved? Who ordered the cover-up? And will the truth ever fully come to light? The discovery of Officer Bradley Cole's dead body in the river shocked the nation, but for those who truly understood the darkness of the system, it wasn't surprise, it was confirmation that Marcus Green's death was never meant to reach trial, never meant to see accountability, because now the man at the center of the scandal was gone, and with him the chance to hear him confess or expose those who ordered the cover-up. But just when the town thought it would all end there, a new wave of evidence came forward. Cole's secret journal pages, which detailed not just his crimes but the names of higher-ranking officials, judges, and even business owners who had helped protect him and his circle for years. The FBI seized those notes and began piecing together a web of corruption bigger than anyone imagined. It revealed that Marcus Green had become a target the moment he decided to speak up, because Cole feared Marcus would link him to Reggie, the former officer turned whistleblower, and Reggie's files hinted at ties to drug money, evidence planting, and falsified arrests. The deeper the FBI dug, the more it became clear Marcus's murder wasn't random, it was an execution carried out to keep secrets buried. Evelyn Green and her grandchildren sat through every update, every hearing, every late-night call, hoping someone would be held accountable. Isaiah spoke again, this time to Congress, telling lawmakers his father was killed because he refused to stay silent. His trembling voice broadcast Across the nation he said if justice dies here then every black father, every family in America is at risk. His courage broke hearts, his strength inspired millions, and soon protests spread beyond their small town, reaching cities across the country chanting Marcus's name, demanding reform. But reform was slow. Cole's death gave politicians the excuse to close the case, claiming the bad apple was gone, yet Tasha the journalist refused. She uncovered another chilling twist. Autopsy reports showed Cole's bruises didn't match drowning, they matched restraint, as if he had been silenced by his own people to erase the trail. Perhaps Cole threatened to talk, perhaps he was becoming a liability and someone decided he needed to disappear forever, just like Marcus, just like the jogger, just like Reggie who vanished. Evelyn whispered through tears that evil consumes itself, and maybe Cole paid the price, but it didn't bring back her son. Nothing could bring him back. The tragedy lingered like smoke over a burned house. The children grew, but the pain remained. Jamal still flinched at sirens. Kayla still drew her father's face. Isaiah carried the heavy weight of becoming his father's voice, yet through their pain they built strength. Their story ignited national calls for oversight of police departments, stronger protections for whistleblowers, and renewed conversations about accountability. But the town itself remained haunted by the woods, by the tree where Marcus's body was found, by the river where Cole was discovered. The community learned that justice is not a straight line, but a fight that never ends. Viewers, as I close this story, I want you to remember Marcus Green. He wasn't a statistic, he wasn't just a headline, he was a father, a son, a man who loved his kids enough to work his hands raw every day. And what was done to him was not just violence against one person, it was violence against hope, against truth, against every family who has ever feared the lights flashing in their rearview mirror. So I ask you right now, don't let this story fade, don't let Marcus's name be forgotten. Hit that like button to show support, share this video so more people hear what happened. Comment below what justice means to you, because your voice matters. And if you haven't yet, subscribe right now and join us in keeping these stories alive, because as long as we speak them they cannot be buried. Marcus Green's fight did not end in those woods, it lives on in his children, in his community, and in all of us who refuse to stay silent. White cop beats black father in front of his kids. Hours later he's found dead in the woods. This was not just a story, this was a warning and a reminder that truth must always find the light. So stay with us for more stories that demand justice, and never forget Marcus Green.